So, Karen, if you would, we thank you for being here.
Thank you all for coming this evening, and my name is Karen Schoen, and I'm running for District 5 representative. District 5 is Jackson, Washington, Holmes, Walton, and Bay County north of 388. And that does encompass north going on 231 as well, so it's Youngstown and Alford and all of those areas over there. So if you like what I say, then I certainly hope that when you leave, you will contact any of the friends that you have in that district and tell them to look at me and my candidacy. I was a teacher and a dean and an administrator in the New York City schools. And I taught in one of the worst schools in the area in Brooklyn. And I was very proud of my classes, because although I always requested the bottom classes, I taught math. And I learned early on that any child, regardless of their socioeconomic stature in life, has intelligence and can learn. So the things that we have been told about what we have to do and provide for our children, for the most part, are not correct. Because children will learn if you find what they are interested in, you can teach them anything. And I'm proud to say that my kids were on stage at the end of the year getting awards for achievement in math. And at that time when I was teaching, we only gave awards for achievement. If you didn't show up, you didn't show up. And that's one of the things that I'd like to talk to you about tonight. For the rest of my background, I was a business owner and I was in the financial industry. I was a mortgage broker and a mortgage banker in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. I also held a real estate license, a Series 6 and 63, so I could trade in the securities, and I had an insurance license. We put together a full-service mortgage company, and that is what we did in New York. When I came to Florida, I continued with my mortgages until the Dodd-Frank bill was passed, and it was decided that the economic problem in our state and the foreclosures were the fault of the mortgage bankers. That was not true either. The mortgage bankers and mortgage brokers are only capable of writing and closing a loan based on the bank's guidelines and parameters, and we could create no laws, no rules, nothing ourselves. So everything that was done at the behest of the major banks. And actually, at one time, they came to our office and told us that we did not even have to put anything on the application except the person's name and social security number. And I said, let me get this straight. If I hold a mirror under their nose, that we will give them a mortgage? And I was told, yes, do that. So this is why we had a failure in mortgages. It was not the people, which is who they blame, buying houses that they could not afford, because when the people were buying those houses, they had jobs and they could afford them. Unfortunately, we went through a series of job-killing policies while people were being told to buy houses. I did a lot of digging into this over the past years, and I discovered that many of the things that we are experiencing on purpose. And that is why I am running for office. Because I've lived through it, I've lived through a lot of experiences, and I have been involved in a group called the Agenders for the last 5 years. We are Americans who are dedicated to bringing these policies to the surface and ending the program that's driving all of this, which is called Agenda 21. Now, a lot of times when I say Agenda 21, people go, oh, you're crazy, that doesn't exist, you're a conspiracy theorist, and blah, 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 blah. Well, the next time when I come back, I will bring you all of the books and articles and everything to show you that it very well does exist. But I want to explain that at this time, a man by the name of G. Gary Lawrence, who was an administrator for Bill Clinton, went to Bill Clinton when this was signed into executive action and said, Bill, if people realize that this is a United Nations initiative, they won't accept it. So let's call it something else. So they changed its name. And they call it names like smart growth, sustainable development, future Earth, resilient Earth. Anything that has to do with green is coming out of this program, which was signed onto by George Bush 41 in 1992 at a convention in Rio. He signed it without reading it. He had no idea what was in it. Why do I know that? Because it wasn't written. So he signed America onto a program that did not exist, had no idea what it was. But one thing we do know is that it was coming from the United Nations. He met with 170 countries, and many of them signed on to what we now fondly call the Green Agenda. And unfortunately, this agenda is very much like a watermelon. It's green on the outside, and it is red on the inside, because it is filled with collectivism, social justice, and massive debt, plus a concerted effort to eliminate private property, by their own words, and the middle class, because the middle class owning private property, which could be your real estate or your job, your business, created an unfair situation because it created wealth for one individual. And under the eyes of communism, that is unacceptable. Wealth then would be redistributed so that everybody would be able to share the same thing. That unfortunately leaves no incentive for anyone. Agenda 21 focuses on three aspects with the desire to change human behavior. And the three things that they focus on are the equity, which is us, our livelihood, our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the environment, and the economy. And they claim that unless all three are working in harmony, that they will not work and life is not sustainable. They also believe that we must be living in what they call sustainable developments. And sustainable developments, take out the word sustainable every place you hear it, replace it with the word control. That's what this is about. Controlled developments are supposed to be, their definition is that we cannot touch the resources that we have today because they might not be there for the next generation. Well, think about that. We're supposed to touch nothing in case, so therefore it will be there for the next generation. What that means is not only can we not touch it, but we can't improve it. We can't better ourselves. We can't do anything like that. Now, in order for people to believe this, there had to be a mechanism to make it happen. And there's only one thing, one common denominator that every American shares, and that's education. No matter where you are, no matter where you come from, every American in some way, shape, or form went to school. And so the schools were altered. And that also happened at the same time in 1992 and before. And the person that brought us all of these wonderful things was George Bush 41, when he went to Congress and said that we must begin a new world order. This is what he was talking about. Well, what was this, or what is this new world order? It is an effort that has behind it three very important, powerful words: money, power, and control. That's what this is about: money, power, and control. It's not about the climate. It's not about making kids smart. It's not about doing right for the middle class. It's not about any of those things. It is about money, power, and control. And if we look at every government program today and we equate it to money, power, and control, you'll see how the pieces will begin to fall. I tell everyone everything is connected. Nothing happens at random. Everything has been pre-planned. There are no such thing as coincidences, and everything is based on lies. Because the only way you can get free people to give up their freedom and liberty would be to lie to them. Because knowingly, they would never do that. And so that is why I chose the Libertarian Party to run for office. I was a Democrat, and I felt they lied. I was a Republican, and I felt they lied. And then I explored the Libertarian Party. And yes, it is a new party. It's a new old party, a new face on an older party. But the thing that I liked about the Libertarian Party is they promote two things. One, the Constitution, and two, the individual. And until we get back to what the meaning of America is, we're going to be following this path that will lead us into servitude, becoming indentured servants through massive debt. And that's what everything else is about. So, as a person running for office, my dedication is to expose all of this. And it was not a single party issue. Just as a short history, George Bush, 41, brought us Agenda 21. He also signed Executive Order 12803. 12803 privatized America's infrastructure and gave our government unconstitutionally the ability to sell America to foreign interests and corporations. And that's what's going on today. Today, our roads in Florida, the toll roads, are controlled by many foreign corporations. I was down in South Florida. I was traveling on I-95. When you get in the express lane that we, the people, paid for, you find toll signs on the top of the lane. Not only are they toll signs, but they change as you're driving. And then I said, where does all this toll money go, since we the people paid for this road a long time ago? And I discovered that they were going to a Spanish corporation who was maintaining the express lane. Our ports have been sold to foreign corporations. The port of Cape Canaveral is the container division is being sold to a Saudi corporation. And I believe in Port Everglades, it is the same thing. I know it is the same thing in New York.
Port of Miami.
Port of Miami, lots of Chinese containment. So George Bush, 41, started the ball rolling. When Congress refused to ratify this agreement, because a friend of mine, Dr. Michael Kaufman, took a look at Agenda 21 and said, oh my God, if we follow this, most of America will be off limits to Americans. He drew a map, which I'll share with you the next time I come back. He drew a map, and on this map, he saw where the people would be living. And they would be living in what we now call sustainable developments. But in a 2011 report put out by the Northwest Florida Green Infrastructure Design that was promoted by the Florida Division of Forestry, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, and the Northwest Florida Regional Council, on page 30 you will find that they are telling us that we will be living in urban containment boundaries. That's what they call them. Urban containment boundaries. And within those urban containment boundaries, you will be able to get around on wheels. And they say bicycles, rollerblades, and wheelchairs. Or you can walk. What's missing from this urban containment boundary? Roads and cars.
And buses.
So therefore, when our transportation department asks for more money, we have to go and look and see what they're actually spending the money on. Because they're certainly not spending them on the roads and bridges. They're busy buying land so that they can create bike paths and walkways. And I'd love to see any commissioner of any county right now turn in their car keys and live in these urban containment boundaries that they'd like us to live in. I haven't found one yet who's willing to do that. Now, most of the things that we are doing, according to Maurice Strong, who was the crafter of Agenda 21, are what they call not sustainable. So therefore, our behavior has to be changed so that we will do more for less. And how are they going to do that? Well, they have to demonize something. They have to make something so bad that Americans will not touch it, will not go near it, and will believe it. Hence comes our neo-environmentalists, and they created the climate scream of climate warming, climate cooling, climate change, whatever they want. But they have to blame it on someone, when in reality, the only thing that controls our climate is the sun. And the only thing that controls greenhouse gas is water vapor from the ocean. The problem is the sun and the ocean will not pay taxes. So they have to find something to blame it on so that humans will be at fault and will then pay taxes. And so what did they do? They picked a gas that is necessary for human life to exist, called carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is made up of 0.03% of the atmosphere. Now, think about this and close your eyes for a moment and envision the Gulf, and that you're out on the Gulf and you're flying over the Gulf and you drop a pin in the Gulf. Is that going to make a difference? No. That's what carbon dioxide, that is about the effect of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So everything that we hear about the green movement is a lie. Everything that we hear about carbon dioxide is a lie. And all of these programs have one thing in mind: money, power, control. So if they subsidize green energy and demonize cheap energy like fossil fuels, what's going to happen? We are going to use less energy. And what is energy? Energy is power. So if we have less power, we won't have businesses. It'll be too expensive. Our food, our containers will be too expensive. We won't be able to buy. So what they have done with this green movement is actually created self-censorship. Now, how do you get all of the people to believe this? In school. And that's what school has become, a mechanism for controlling the population by feeding them inaccurate information and creating a scare so that the people will be afraid and will demand that the government create a new program to alleviate the fear of what's going to happen. And before I stop and open for questions, I want to tell you one quick story. There is an area up here which happens to be in my district, and it's beautiful. It's called Alice Beach, and by Santa Rosa Beach and Watercolor. It's a beautiful area. It was created by a man whose name is Andre Duwani. And yes, it is one of his first, quote, sustainable developments. So there are minimal cars, minimal ways to get around. But Nobody forced anybody to go and live there. The people move there or vacation there with the full knowledge that they are going to an area where they won't be doing a lot of driving. Nobody's pushing them into these communities. That's the difference. That's the big difference. Andre Duany was creating these communities and had a desire to do so now on the East Coast. He was part of the creation of a plan called the 750 Plan. And that is part of a regional group. Up here we have Northwest Florida Regional Coalition. Down there they have 750, and that was 7 counties over 50 years. And the 7 counties went from Monroe County up to Indian River County. And when Andre was pushing this idea that everybody in these counties should be living in these green communities, what was he saying? The reason was that they had to build a seawall from South Florida all the way up to Indian River and probably further north, because the ocean was going to rise 4 to 20 feet. Now, somebody forgot to tell Andre that we live on a peninsula, and if you put a wall on one side, it's not going to do much of anything. But the other thing is something that you can share with your children, your grandkids. Take a glass of water and fill it up with ice and put it on the table, and ask them if they believe the oceans are going to rise. And then explain that the ice cubes would represent the glaciers and what will happen when the glaciers melt. Well, if Andre is right and the oceans are going to rise 4 to 20 feet, by the time the ice melts, the water will be spilling all over the floor. Does that happen? No. The water level remains the same, because ice is just water in another format. And the only thing that's going to happen is as the ice melts, it will fill up the space that the ice cubes had. So what Andre is describing is a physical impossibility. How did we get all of these plans and programs? They were made up on a computer. They were modeled on a computer. And Agenda 21 bases all of its information on what they call the precautionary principle. And what that means is, if I can think it's going to happen, and I can make up a computer program, and the government is going to give me a grant, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to turn around and regulate the people based on my computer program. And that's why we have a problem in our farming, and that's why we have a problem with our fishing, and that's why we have a problem with our fuel and our energy sources. The computer models are what's being used. Now, on your table, I said I was a teacher, so I always leave everybody homework. You have a folder. The folder is about myself, so you can read about me. And the flyer has 2 sides to it. See, I am not in favor of no conservation. We don't want to waste paper. I am in favor of conservation. However, conservation has to make sense. And the ones that must be conserved are the humans, because without the humans, the animals would have a rough time. We have an amendment. It's called Amendment 1, and that's going to be on our ballot in November. And to me, it is extremely dangerous, because if you remember what I said, they lie. And this amendment says land and water conservation. And what it really means is land and water control. We have groups like 1,000 Friends of Florida, the Sierra Club, the Audubon Society, the World Heritage Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, and a myriad of thousands of other groups. We call them NGOs. Those are non-government organizations. And they get money from we the people and turn around and create laws to regulate us. Those laws are unconstitutional. Article 4, Section 4 of our Constitution guarantees each and every one of us the ability to, the guarantee to have a Republican representative form of government. That means we vote for the people who will create the laws by which we will be governed. And just because our Congress gave the EPA power does not mean it has power. It only has power because we, the people, are not paying attention and giving the EPA that power. If we're going to take back the power, which is what this is all about, this is about two groups of people, and this election is about two groups of people. One group believes the government should own everything and control everything, and the other group believes that it is up to the individual. And that's the individual exceptionalism that makes America great. That we have a rule of law, that we are all equal under this rule of law, and that as a result of that, working with that rule of law, exceptional people will do exceptional things and work together to create an exceptional country. And that is what we have done for the last 235 years. Well, the people who are interested in government control want that changed. They don't feel that we're capable. They feel that they know more and are doing better than we the people. And that's why I'm running for office. My candidacy is for the people. I refuse any special interest money. I will not go to Tallahassee and have someone tap me on the shoulder and say, I gave you money, you're going to vote like this. Nobody except the people are going to give me money. And therefore, it is going to be up to the people to make the decision. My voice doesn't even count. It is what does my constituents want. And as a result of that and finding out what they want, starting in September, I intend to have conference calls, and we will go over all of the topics that we are facing and come together, because that's the wonderful thing that I learned as I was running for office, and that is that the people are more together than our leaders or the elite would like to think, want to think, and have any knowledge. So it's Americans coming together to do great things is the only way America can come back. And with that, I'm running for office. You can go to votekarenschoen.com and hopefully like what I say and make a donation, because that's how this candidacy is working. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to coming back.
Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Does anybody have any questions? I know I started a lot.
No.
On your flyer,
Yes.
It says that you have good credits for a PhD, but didn't write a thesis supporting communism.
That's right.
Why were they forcing you to write a thesis on communism?
Because the school that I went to was called the New School of Social Research. And what it was a school for teachers to teach teachers how to behaviorally modify the behavior of their students. And when you learn all about it, what they were pushing was communism, collectivism, communalism. And as a result of that, I would have had to write a thesis to support that. And when I realized that it was communism, I refused to write the thesis, so I never got my doctorate.
I guess there was no way you could work around that?
No.
Something
That's,
else?
think about what's going on today. You have people that are shut out of saying things. Teachers are afraid to talk. You've got news people that get fired for saying what somebody doesn't like. People are afraid for their family. When you are up against a machine like this, you have to choose your battles. And my getting a PhD was not as important to me as not supporting communism. So I could have gone back to school and taken another major, but I decided to teach and finish and then retire from teaching and go into business and see what that was like. So a PhD at that time didn't mean anything.
So what you were talking about, we were talking about Common Core. One way I combated it was pulling my oldest kid out and I'm homeschooling him. However, my other child is in Catholic school and they are going along with Common Core. So
That's a fallacy that people think. It does not matter where the child is going to go to school. Once everything is, quote, Common Core aligned, Florida State standards, same thing. They just changed the name. Once they are aligned in that mechanism, it doesn't matter whether they go to a parochial school, whether they go to a charter school, or whether they go to a public school. So the idea of school choice is irrelevant because at 10 o'clock every morning on Tuesday, everybody's going to be doing the same thing in the 4th grade. So you're not going to have any choice. That's the idea. The idea of Common Core and Florida State standards are to teach the children what to think, not how to think. And they are being tracked in a very tight mechanism, which is being controlled by the computer, which is why turning everything into digital is a very bad idea. First of all, there's a couple of reasons, and one of them is when you read a book, when a child reads a book, you get a feeling of accomplishment because when you finish a chapter and you close the book and you think about it, you've completed a task. When you finish the book, you've completed a major task. That doesn't happen on a computer. On a computer, it just leads to the next, to the next, to the next. So the child never has the feeling that they have accomplished anything. It's just one thing after the other after the other. So textbooks are extremely important. The replacement of our literature with instructional material, and that is coming from the Republicans that are in office, is their alignment with big business. Well, coming from the business world, I can tell you that the most expensive part of any business is training. I had to train my loan officers. I had to train the people that worked for me. And after I finished training them, I was happy that they stayed because many times they would say, wow, what great training, and then go and open their own business. Well, that was okay because I felt I made them successful. I helped. And we continued and we worked together. But the training part was the most expensive. Well, now what's happening? That training is coming back on the backs of we, the taxpayer. It's not our job to train a child so that they can go work for Motorola or IBM or a bank. That's not what school is about. School is about educating a child for life so that they can make the right choices for their destiny. It is not about training them so that they can fit in a slot and work for a corporation. And that's what our schools have become. And yesterday, the stats came in, the statistics came in for the international education in comparison to what was going on in the world. And America slipped and is now in the 30s. How much money have we spent on education? It does not work because the purpose of education is not education. The purpose of education is to make